Welcome to #Adulting, your one-stop shop to help you get your shit together in the 4 areas of life plaguing you most.
Food and fitness,
sex and dating,
mental and emotional health,
and money and business management. I'm Zack Peter, the sassy self-improvement addict, wellness enthusiast, and host, spewing all those burning questions you're too afraid to ask.
I'm Abigail Fraher, a boss babe who daylights as a lifestyle guru and fashion maven.
And I'm Nikki Sharp, your go-to wellness expert, best-selling author, motivational speaker, and all-around fitness fanatic. Together, we're helping you truly live your best life because this is adulting at its finest.
What's up, everybody? I'm Zack Peter, and I've got fellow boss babe Abigail Fraher here with me.
Hey, guys.
So I am super excited for this week's episode because I'm telling you right now, it's going to be a work party. Not only because she's a blast to hang out with, but also because that's literally the title of her book and her podcast. She's been listed as one of Forbes 30 Under 30, named an Adweek Disruptor, and a self-made woman by the Los Angeles Times. And my God, is she just so effortlessly fly. Chances are if you've attended a career conference dedicated to empowering women in the workforce or in life lately, she and her team probably created it. Please welcome the CEO of Create and Cultivate, Jaclyn Johnson.
Best intro ever. Can you just follow me around?
Every episode, if they get better and better. And I'm just like, well, damn, Zach's on it.
I was like, oh my God, Abigail, I forgot to write my intro. Let me write it real quick.
Nailed
and
it.
then
So
we
good.
got it down.
Nailed it.
Okay, so to kick things off, we want you to espresso yourself, okay? So Abigail's going to have some sentences that you're going to help her finish.
Let's do it.
You're going to finish some sentences for me. So first up, I can't start my day without.
I mean, my dog cuddles like in the morning. Like I just am like, I just love to just hold him and like kiss him. Like my husband, whatever. But like my dog
You're like,
is like what I'm
kind
here
of dog?
for. He's a Yorkie poo.
Okay.
His name's Noah. He's a little babe.
I love that. Next sentence, I feel sexiest when.
I get 8 hours of sleep. So
Oh.
lame,
Yes.
but
No,
my
I love
God.
everyone's being so real
I'm
with
so
these. That's
tired.
the best. Yep. What's your average hours of sleep?
I
that you
mean,
get?
my husband and I joke, but I try to go to bed by 10 p.m., which
Okay.
I feel like is on the earlier side, but I get up really early too. I need 8 hours.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not a functioning human otherwise.
It's good to know. I'm taking
No,
notes
I'm not
right
one of
now.
those people that be like, I only sleep for 4 hours and then I just need a coffee and a meditation. I'm like, fuck off.
Yeah, I'm a
yeah.
dead body. Yeah.
But I am actually. I'm like a 4-hour or a 10-hour. Like I feel like 8. I'm like, can I get one more hour in?
Yeah.
Or if I'm like 3 is like so bare minimum. But I
Brutal.
think 4 is just like this like nap time situation. I'm like a long napper too.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna take the 30-minute nap. It's gonna be like a
No.
4-hour nap, and then
I
you
do
wake
it-
up and you slept through your.
I do a 30-minute nap and then I normally we'll do another 30-minute nap.
You're like,
I don't
When
know
the
if
alarm
4
goes off.
hours is still considered a nap.
no. You're like, that was asleep. That was asleep.
I think.
Next is when I go to the gym, I.
Usually hit the treadmill. Like that's my jam. I obviously love to like zone out and listen to podcasts. Duh.
Is that
Yeah.
that's your gym routine?
Oh yeah,
the podcast. I love that.
I love podcasts so much. It's
Okay.
like I shortened my commute recently, and it's like depressing because I'm like, I
Oh,
only
yeah.
get like 10 minutes, and normally I'd have like this hour. But
Podcasts are the best for driving to work, but gym podcasts, I like that. I'm gonna have to try that. I'm always
I know.
doing
I did Pop Sugar roundups for both commute and workout.
Oh, I didn't see your workout one.
And I did a workout one right
I'm gonna
after.
go check that out now. Last is I most feel like a boss when I.
sign a big money deal.
Oh, yes.
I love it. Now we know you better.
Oh,
I feel like
yes,
the
we're
ice
here.
is broken.
Like I like money. I like to sleep. What else?
Can we be
I like
best
podcasts.
friends? Wow, I love it.
So we read your book, Work Party. Loved your book. And so I guess for people that haven't read the book yet, what would you describe as a work party? Is it just like cocktails during lunch at the office?
Right. So I kind of like joke and say like, yes, no, this does not mean that I have like parties and streamers and champagne pouring from the ceiling in the office. It just means when you are passionate and love what you're doing, your work can feel like a party. Every day can be fun and exciting, even though it might be spreadsheets and hard work and long hours and all these things. I think there's this new generation of people that are coming to the table people, very much like yourselves, where you're saying like, I'm going to create and cultivate the career of my dream. It might be 4 jobs that I do. It might be 5 gigs, but I'm passionate and love doing all of them. Oh, and I happen to make money from it. And I think that's kind of the new approach to the American dream. Whereas before it was like, I'm going to work at a company for 20 years. I'm going to slave. I'm going to work my way up. I'm going to like finally get that paycheck. I'm going to finally buy the house. I think that whole dynamic has shifted and changed. Work has fundamentally changed over the past 5-10 years. I mean, even month over month, it's changing. So that was really the approach I wanted to take. Was, did I like, when I was 21, think I'm going to run a conference and like be able to like create content and work with all these cool people and like that's going to be my job? No, I stumbled into this shit much like everyone else.
Yeah.
And you ran with it though, like
Yeah.
to what you were enjoying.
And it just takes resiliency, persistence, and passion to really make something happen.
So are you anti the traditional graduate from high school, go to college, get a master's degree, start at an entry-level job and work your way up to the top of the company? Do you think that that model still works for some people, and who doesn't it work for?
Like, it doesn't work for doctors. Like, you can't just be like, I'm going to YouTube this and like head into the hospital, throw on my scrubs. Like, no. Like, there's definitely certain jobs that obviously require that more traditional path. But I do think entrepreneurship, and I think, you know, we've probably grown up in that era of Mark Zuckerberg and seeing people build stuff in their college dorm rooms and like, you know, raise multi-billion-dollar, you know, whatever it is. So I think that I think if you have an idea, if you have a solve for a problem that you don't see anyone else doing, if you're looking at that white space and saying, I can do this better, cheaper, you know, more efficiently, and I want to try it, I think you should absolutely try it. I think, you know, I kind of in the book put some caution and bumpers around that when it comes to, I'm going to throw my own personal hundreds of thousands of dollars at this and then it backfires and you're kind of screwed. Like, careful on that stuff. But I do think we're in this new sort of renaissance of entrepreneurship where you can really kind of take your ideas, take what you love. And I mean, people are literally monetizing their personalities at this point. Like, that's wild. Exactly. So anyway, I think it's a really interesting time. I think it's very exciting. And I think, you know, I'm kind of interested to see where the whole college thing kind of goes. Like I said, obviously certain careers kind of make sense for it. But even we have an intern right now who it's like, I love work. I'm great in a working environment. I'm not like killing it on my chem test, but like, you know, so I do think there's some interesting things kind of happening there, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Do you think that entrepreneurism is something that is kind of embedded in your DNA, or is it something that can be learned?
I think it's something that can be learned for sure. I was definitely an accidental entrepreneur, even though my family, my mom and dad are entrepreneurs. I was living corporate life in my early 20s. I was like working for massive companies, working my way up. I never in a million years was like, I'm going to start my own company. But I essentially got laid off in a city where I didn't know anyone. I started freelancing. That freelancing actually became a company. That company then became a bigger company. That company then got sold and I started a second company. And I just want to say, like, I was a magazine major. Like, I was trying to, like, work at Vogue. Like, I wasn't trying to be like, let's talk about P&Ls and, like, OPEX. And, like, it was not interesting to me at all. But I really kind of fell in love with it. And I learned a lot of lessons. And I obviously got better over time as an entrepreneur. But I think absolutely people can be entrepreneurs. Like, if you can honestly, like, YouTube your business degree at this point. Like,
University of Google.
And there's so many freelancers, especially in Los Angeles. I don't think people realize like you are basically running your own business in that sense of it's your own time and you know, getting an LLC instead of just like taking that 1099. And there's so many ways that, like you said, your past just kind of develops you into an entrepreneur. Do you think that that being said, you know, you're also telling people, hey, your day job can be your investor. Look at it that way. How does that line work? And like, when do you say, hey, now let's quit the day job and then move into just this? What's your advice there?
This is the most popular question at Create and Cultivate conferences. Okay. So everyone has
I'm glad I'm on. Like,
you're nailing it. So side hustles, obviously people have, they're trying to figure it out. Like, I want to do this full time, et cetera, et cetera. So the best advice that we've sort of, you know, figured out over time is twofold. One is definitely looking at your job as your, you know, investor in your company. So I think the biggest thing you need to know is what kind of company you're starting, what kind of capital you need to start that business, and what you need in a 6-month roadmap. So do I need to hire an employee? Do I need to have a shipping facility? I don't know. It totally depends on the business you're launching, but map that out month over month, what each month is going to cost you just to run that business. Then save enough money to be able to have those funds in place for at least 6 months.
So 6 months is like your minimum.
That's the runway I think you need to kind of go into a business and see if it's really working. Sure. And then essentially you just kind of take the leap, right? You have that money, you know, you've got 6 months, you've got 6 months of proof of concept, and then see where you're at month over month. Okay. One of the best pieces of advice I got as an entrepreneur was around employees, right? So basically, you know, I was always thinking when someone was like, oh, there's, you know, making $75,000 a year as a salary, I was like, I cannot afford that. Like, I cannot afford to pay someone $75,000. Oh my God. Yeah. But what they were saying is actually take a step back and think about it each monthly,
right?
Yeah. Because each month that breaks down to a certain amount. And can you afford that each month? And each month you're making more money because you have that person there. And like thinking about it in that way will make it feel less big and more solvable from like a month over month sort of situation. So I think it's important to think in months as an entrepreneur, and really kind of build your financial runway so that you know this is my timeline, right? I got 6 months to make this work. If it doesn't work, I'm going back and getting a job or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I will say, just to piggyback off of knowing when the time is right. So I started asking myself, when I had a full-time job, I was asking myself, I remember listening to, I think it's called Second Life Podcast. I listened to which is a great fucking podcast. And I listened to an interview that Kelly LeVeque did about when she transitioned over to being a full-time nutritionist. And now everyone knows her for like, you know, a nutritionist, Jessica Alba and all the celebrities. And I remember having her on No Filter, which is my other podcast, and asking her like, when do you know when it's time to jump? And so the best advice that I could give to answer that question is, if you're asking yourself that question, when do I know it's time? It's probably very close. Yeah. You're reaching that point, and you want to make sure that when you make that jump from full-time job to side hustle, you're ready for it. Because I will tell you right now, I asked that question for 2 years until I got laid off from my full-time job and lost a six-figure salary and was fucked. Yeah. Like and then I had to figure it out.
Literally same. I love it. Like, and sometimes you just get laid off and the world is like, go.
Yeah, right. Like, let us help you.
No, I was building up my savings. I maybe had like a 2-3 month, you know, little nugget. Just signed a brand new lease in downtown LA. Everything was just like, it was great. And then it was like, okay, now I really need to figure this shit out. So make sure you're ready for it so that you're not like then having to scramble and figure it out. Right. I mean, granted, those are the most character building moments that really build you. But
and you really feel like you find out who you are. And
talk about adulting.
How you can rebound and all of those things. That's a scary situation.
So when did you know that you wanted to go from being a freelance to starting your first company?
It kind of happened accidentally. So I was freelancing. I had a bunch of clients. It was going really well. Again, I was like coming off of being laid off, and started doing it that way. And then I met my future essentially business partner who also was a freelancer doing her own thing. We ended up getting office space in downtown LA. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, I have a lease. I have like, you know, it was so exciting. And then we ended up teaming up to start our first company. And then we were hiring employees, and like all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, like we're starting a company. Right. And truly, I don't think I would have done it had I not met that business partner. I do think there is like a very specific safety you have in sort of having a co-founder and having someone that you're doing it with, where you're like, we're in this together. So that's how that company started. Obviously didn't end that well. But essentially like that's kind of how we started building it. And it was like just every month, like, okay, we have another client, we have a new employee. Okay, we're growing, we're like making all these decisions. And it was a true learning curve with that business. And just trying to figure it out day by day, and like dealing with all the, you know, nightmares of people not paying you, or employees doing this, that, the other, getting benefits, like all that stuff was just like, honestly, my first company was truly an education in like building a business.
And so were there moments, and how did you talk yourself out of those moments of like when you were trying to make it happen and you would hit those roadblocks where it felt like, okay, I don't know if this is the universe telling me, either challenging me or telling me to get out and like pivot? How did you decipher when it was time to stay and like when it's time to bounce?
So it's actually funny. So I remember the first month, like we broke even, like we didn't make money, and I like called my mom and I was like, all right, well, this is it. Like, you know, we're shutting down shop or whatever. She's like, people break even for years. Like, what are you talking about?
Wait, your first month you broke even? That's phenomenal.
No, I just didn't know. I was like, oh, okay. And like, as soon as things got hard, I was like, this is it. And she was just like, look, entrepreneurship ebbs and flows. There's going to be great months and horrible months. And like, that's what you're signing up for, is like being resilient in those moments. And like, unless you're like bleeding cash and like things are going horribly awry, or like you have 4 lawsuits against whatever it is, then you can have that conversation. But like, if you have like a difficult client or someone who's not paying you, or like you didn't make enough money that month or whatever it might be, like that is par for the course. Like that is just what normal business is. And like, you just have to get used to kind of handling it. And I think when you become the entrepreneur, you get a lot of really amazing things, right? You're the face of the company, you're a founder, all these things. But that also means that you take on all the shit. Like any fire comes back to you, any problem comes back to you, even if you didn't know about it happening. And like, you are the one that is all going to fall back on. So just knowing that going into it, especially when you're starting small and you're like, oh, like what could possibly go wrong?
Everything.
Buckle up.
Everything.
Buckle up, because it's a bumpy ride. And like, especially when you get to like bigger and levels, it's funny because it's like people are always like, oh my God, you're like, really doing it. And now you have like 25 employees and like, you must really just be like, going to dinners and doing stuff. I'm like, no, girl, I am dying. I'm dying in my really nice office, but I'm dying. But yeah, it definitely does not get easier, but you get better.
Right.
Yeah, you learn how to juggle everything.
Is there something that you would say, like, if someone listening is thinking about it, is there something that you'd be like, hey, if you don't want to deal with this, like, it's not for you? And is it, do you think entrepreneurship is for everybody?
No, absolutely not. And I have like such respect for people who are like, I have zero desire to be the boss, and like, I'm here to work for someone, and like, that's what I want to do. Because I do think there's a lot of, really positive things that can come with that. I think being the boss sometimes, I mean, again, it's really taking on a world of responsibility, especially when you have employees. So not only am I responsible for you getting paid, me getting paid, the office getting paid, the bills getting paid, the people coming to our events, them having a good experience, like the sites sound cool. Like every little thing comes back to me, and that pressure is immense, which is why I think there's so many books and podcasts and things about like founder depression and like the realities of being a boss, because I think like entrepreneurs have become somewhat celebrated in like celebrity status, and it's like, I mean, it's just
you're seeing one side.
It's one side. And look, there are absolutely perks to like my job, and I love what I do, but I think if you aren't willing to take on that heaviness of responsibility, like with great power comes great responsibility, Spider-Man, whatever. Like, I think that's so true. Sure. And I think it's like, look, every day I'm not like, oh, I'm so excited to take on this fire today. Yeah. I'm like, oh, here we go again.
You gotta suit up.
Yeah, you gotta suit up.
And how do you reset yourself? Sorry, I'm like,
no.
I'm like loving this. So what, like, I feel like that for me, I don't own my own business, but I'm an executive director. So I have 60 employees underneath me, and basically,
that's a lot.
There are days where you're like, fuck, like, I don't want to come to work. Like, how do you reset that whole momentum in you to like, pick up and go?
I think it's really about having people around you that can pick you up, because I think being at the top can be really lonely. And I think a lot of times is like, I can't go like bitch and moan to my employees. Like, guys, this is so hard. Like, they're going to be like, wait, what? We're looking at you as like, you're our leader. Like, so
you're the one that's supposed to have your shit together.
You have your safe space of like, look, whether it's therapy or business coaching or whatever it is, like, which I have both. Okay. I definitely think you need someone to be able to talk to and like be able to like get that advice, get that like third party advice, which I think is so important as you're building and doing stuff. And I think, when you're going into this, you don't know what you're getting into, and you don't know how fast your company is going to grow, or if it's going to crash and burn, or whatever it is. And like, having someone you can talk to in those moments, as the world moves so fast, there's so many things. I mean, like call out culture, Instagram, creating content. Are you doing your stories? Are you doing whatever it is? Like, all of those things, it moves so fast and it's so intense. We're not built for that. Like, I don't think we truly are. So I think you can find those safe spaces and like really kind of, you have to be, people always ask me like, oh, what about self-care? I'm like, I like barely have time to work out. Like, but I'm like, I do make time for that part of it, where it's like, I'm able to kind of just vent and like be the, almost employee for a second.
Sure. Or I've learned that like when it comes to self-care, I think people think it's like, CBD bath bombs and like getting a massage and going to Ojai for the weekend. But like, it really can just be like taking a breath and being like, what do I need right now? Yeah. Do I need to go for a walk? Did I have too much coffee? Do I just need some water? Like, and like,
do I need to hydrate?
Like, and it's sometimes that simple, and that is self-care. So, all right, guys, we're going to take a very quick break to talk to you about our pals at Hum Nutrition. You know how much we love Hum Nutrition.
We love them. They're even in our building.
They're even in our building that we tape this at.
We're stalking them.
We're stalking them. We went to their Hum HQ and we like stocked up on our vitamins, which are so yummy. I love the Hair Sweet Hair gummies.
Yep.
Obsessed with the Hair Sweet Hair gummies. I take them all the time.
They work. Look how fast your hair's going.
Yeah, look at that. I even posted on my Instagram that has a whole video that you can see like how fast my hair grew and how big and bellowy it is.
It is. It's gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
nice and fluffy.
We love it. We have glow sweet. I'm a sucker for gummies, so I love hair sweet hair, and I love glow sweet.
I do love the gummies. I take them every morning. I mean, we'll see. I just chopped it, so it's healthy. And the Flatter Me, love.
Oh, the Flatter Me enzymes. Yeah.
Yes,
they're so.
I take that with my 2 meals a day.
I love that they have such a variety of different supplements that you can take, but yet they're all focused on like this beauty from within
100%.
to like make you look good and feel good from the inside out.
And with all the fires we've been having, the detox one I've been taking, and that's really been helping. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, they have a whole plethora of vitamins that you're gonna love, so you're gonna want to go and check them out. Go to humnutrition.com, and if you want 20% off, you can use code ADULTING because that's what you're gonna be doing when you're checking out Hum Nutrition.
Right?
Adulting.
Take your vitamins. Be an adult.
Be an adult. Take your vitamins. Look cute doing so too.
Exactly.
And their branding is like super.
Their branding's
super friggin' dope.
Yep.
Yeah, go to humnutrition.com and use code ADULTING for that 20% off right now. So I think there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there or a lot of business leaders that have become, part of this, business celebrity culture that have come out and they have a lot of hot advice that I kind of want your take on. So I hear about starting young and then also this other argument. Gary Vee talks about this a lot about how like, when you're young, you have all the time in the world. Like don't rush to start a business now. But then you have other entrepreneurs who are like, no, start young. And the earlier you start, the faster you get those lessons out of the way. So which side of the spectrum are you on? Are you like start young or are you like, you have all the time in the world?
I started young, so I'm obviously going to say start young. I started my first company when I was 23. So I had no idea what I was doing. I had very little to lose at that point. I could always go back and get a job. I think, I loved it. I had the energy. I had the momentum. Everyone around me was in that pool. I think like it was so much easier then than it is now. And I think it also depends on the type of business you're looking to create, because I think like when you're going out and want to do something like big and like whatever it is, like develop AI or like something that's like so intense and requires like millions of dollars, like maybe get some experience, like maybe like clock a few hours. But I think if you're just like, I have this idea, I'm very clear on it, I know what I want to do, I know what I'm good at, and I'm like gonna go for it, I think that makes a lot of sense. So I think it just kind of depends. I have a good friend of mine started a company when she was like in her 30s, and she was like, I just used like Goldman Sachs and whatever as my education. I worked there for 10 years. I learned everything about venture capital. I learned all this stuff. And then I went out and now I'm a startup founder and I was able to raise money, know what I'm doing financially. And I'm like, that's amazing. And that makes a lot of sense. But I do think there's a beauty in the naivety and the vulnerability of being in your early 20s and just throwing caution to the wind and just saying, fuck it. And then also just being like, cool, I'll get a job next week if I need it, because that's available. Like, I think it's a little bit more challenging when you're further down the road and you have like a lot more responsibilities and like a mortgage. Like, I don't know, it feels very stressful.
Or like a family or
like
whatever.
I don't think I would start a company after Create and Cultivate. Like, I feel like this is it for me and like this is my business and my baby, but I don't think I'd be like, oh cool, and like let me start another one. Like this is my second business, like I'm good.
Your baby's already getting ready to go to college and like you don't want to start over. I get that. Okay, what about the So I've heard Michael Bostic, who is the owner of Dear Media. So I've heard him talk about how like when he first started his company, his priority wasn't about paying himself as the owner. Where do you take on paying yourself at the beginning?
Yeah, you don't. So yeah, you don't. And I feel like I chatted about this on their podcast too. It's really interesting because I think people think, oh, founders and people, they're making so much money, they're killing it. Like, no, founders make no money. Yeah. Like, really, like you have to build the business to scale and grow. And like, essentially, if you're looking to ever sell that company and they're like, oh, cool, you're taking home like $500,000 a year, like investors won't want to see that. They want to see that dedication and reinvestment back into the company. And look, like once you start making money and are established, hell yeah, take money off the table as a founder, you deserve it. But when you're first starting out, I think it's really important to take a very low salary. Obviously making sure you can live and sustain and all that stuff. But like your goal truly is to be building and reinvesting back into the company.
Yeah, and I think that's really telling of what your priority is with the company. Is it to make money, or is it because you're passionate about it?
Why do you have that company? Which I guess it's fine to start a company if you just want to make money, but it's also like You need to get to that point where you can make the money.
Yeah, and you need to like be willing to put in the dirty work to get there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And you're not going to do that if you're not passionate and it doesn't like
it's
actually.
Personality. It's an indicator of your personality traits, and totally. And I like too how when you broke it down, like, hey, when should you start a business, earlier, younger? Like, it is very situational. There isn't like a cutout for every business.
No, and honestly, we have like this large demographic at Create and Cultivate that I love. That's like 45 to 50-year-old women who are like, I am like over it. I work 20 years at this company. I'm so inspired by these entrepreneurs and I want to go be an entrepreneur. And I'm like, hell yeah to that too. Second life, second career, like do your thing.
Or
I think
your kids leave and you're like, I've always loved doing this. Like, why don't I do I like
so
that.
It's situational, but I think anyone can be an entrepreneur at any age.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I definitely didn't think I would be having second life, second career at 26,
right.
you know, with losing. And I just want to clarify, because like there's the difference between like getting fired and getting laid off, which are two very different things. Yes. And so because I actually I think I barely even told you about, losing, not everything.
No, but like it kind of feels like that.
It came very abruptly, that I wasn't expecting. I don't want to make this about me, but I just want to, I didn't even remember the point I was trying to make right now.
No, I'm so curious now to like hear more.
It was just like, it came so out of left field. And that was kind of the moment that I realized, like, it was a company that I was really passionate and fulfilled doing. But then it kind of got to a point where I was like, okay, now I'm ready to stop living my life for other people and for a board and for, people that I have to answer to. And now I'm ready to kind of really ready for the next chapter of my life and help people in a different way.
Sure.
Which, was definitely the universe being like, okay,
time to jump and
fly. Ready, let's go.
And I think it was interesting. I did an interview recently where they were like, what made you think you could be like an entrepreneur? I was like, everything that made me like kind of an annoying, bad employee actually made me a really good entrepreneur. Like I, again, loved the company I was working for. I was like working my way up. I was like super well compensated. I was like director level. I was super young and I was like career girl. Like that was like my vibe amongst my friends. Like I'm killing it. And then to get laid off was like so devastating. I was like so embarrassed. I was like, oh my God. But basically it was like I came in hot to this company and I was like, we should be doing, and this is gonna date myself, but I was like, we should be partnering with like Foursquare and like Yelp and like doing all these cool things and everyone was like, take a seat, honey, like fucking relax.
Who do you think you are?
And I was oh cool, I thought we're not doing that. And it was like they were not having it. And and I kept like trying to pitch ideas and like things, and like everyone was just like, I was like, influencers are gonna be big. They're like, no, they're not. Like, and it was just a constant like battle of like me trying, and then finally they're like, okay, you're just like not a fit. Yeah. And then like I literally took all of that and was like, I'm gonna start a company. And then it became like a multi-million-dollar company. I was like, okay guys, like, so basically it's like looking at stuff like that where it's like, okay, like everything that was like they were like no was like a yes when it came to starting my own company. So think about those things when you're like in the workforce and like thinking about your new project.
Yeah. And so now I remember the point that I wanted to make when I was bringing that up was in the book you talk about ageism. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's a big conversation about sexism right now, but like ageism is not something I even realized was a thing until I really heard you write about it. Because like I started working when I was 15 years old. Mm-hmm. And so my background was in fundraising and was in activism. And so when you're 15, 16 years old and you work in the nonprofit world and you believe that you can change the world because you're that naive at that age, like you attract that passion and that fire attracts the
it attracts the negativity though
yes
too.
Yeah, it triggers people's insecurities about not feeling that passionate or fulfilled in their lives. What was your experience like facing that, because you started at such a young age?
Yeah, and I honestly didn't really figure that out until later on and kind of reflecting on it. But I would go into rooms and be pitching at big companies or like, again, male dominated companies. And it was always like, oh my God, you're so cute. And like everything was like that. And then I'd be asking for money and they'd be like, okay, calm down. Like, we're going to pay you this much. And I would take it. I'd be like, okay, like, because I didn't know better until like later on when I'm like, absolutely not. Like I'm worth this much. And like, this is what I'm doing. And like, what I started realizing was as I was pitching in these rooms for like influencer marketing, social media marketing campaigns, I was like, I'm your consumer. I'm the person that you want to buy your product. So what I know is valuable and you need it more than I need it. So like once I kind of own that power of like, okay, I'm good if you don't want to pay that much for my marketing retainer, but like, here's why it works and here's all these, and like all of a sudden it was like, okay, like we're willing to pay it. Sure. But it took that kind of confidence over time to kind of get there. And I think it's interesting to look back and think, again, I had like my gender working against me, my age working against me. And again, it was a very pre-Me Too movement, but like the shit I put up with in meetings and like the things that were said to me over email, like I remember firing my first client because he literally was so rude, so condescending to my team and me, like, sweetie, you don't know, blah, 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 blah. And I literally was like, I don't need your money. And I remember firing him and he was like, you'll regret this. Like, you're firing me, like getting so upset. But it was the most empowering moment for me to be like, bye, I don't need this. And unfortunately, like it took me a while to get to that position, obviously, because you need money. And that when you're first starting out, you're like, give me, whatever, $5, let's do it. So I think it's just important to really like tell other people that, like, sit in your power once you're there and like, you know, don't take the first offer.
And you segued perfectly into our next point of contract negotiation. Mm-hmm. I know Zach has a lot of questions on it. I have my first contract I actually did negotiate, which
you did?
I was literally no, I did. I was listening to you and I was like, good for you. Like I didn't realize how uncommon it was, and maybe I just, again, like you said, you're ignorant to, and so I was like, well, let me see how much I could get away with here. But women especially aren't doing that as much as they should. So can you go through like a list of your top, maybe top 5 things with contract negotiation?
Well, most women do not negotiate their contracts. And I think, again, it depends on the contract you're going for. But like, again, if it's salary, which is obviously the most common, just knowing that when you're going in for a salary negotiation, one, it's illegal to ask what you made at your last job.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So most employers will ask like, what range do you want to be in? What do you want to be making? They can't ask like, how much were you making at your last job? So what I would do in this situation is tell them your like fuck you number, right? Like, so if they're like, okay, how much do you want to be making? If you know you need to be making $75,000 a year, let's just say, look, I really want to be making around $85,000 a year. They're going to negotiate back. So if you go back and they're like, okay, well, like we're thinking 80 or like whatever, you're already ahead of the game. Or if they come back and they're like lower than that, then you have room to negotiate there as well. So I think you always want to go in super high and negotiate down. You don't want to go like crazy.
What's that level for you?
Yeah, because
how do you determine what that?
Yeah, because in my range, or in my mind, I always have a range for every position. It's usually like a $20,000 flux. Okay. Like this position is gonna be between 70 and 90, depending on their experience and all these different things. But like, for instance, like we interviewed someone and it was like for, I don't know, an account level role, and they came in, they were like, I'm making like $150,000 a year, and I was like, okay, girl, like
stay there.
Yeah, I was like, girl, do not. But then I think she stretched.
But then you're like, she's taking my advice.
Exactly, she's taking my advice. So it was like too much, because then we came back and I was like, just transparently, we're looking between this and this, and she's like, oh, I'm open to that. In my mind, I'm like, you're open to take a $60,000 pay cut? Like, that's not good. But I also felt like, oh, she kind of came, and it goes either way. Who knows? Some company might have been like, great, so it's like it could have worked out for her. But I think you just have to know market rate, know what's important to you. Like, if you're like, I want you to pay for my cell phone bill, or I want like extra vacation days, or I want to work from home, like, especially at big companies, you can negotiate that stuff in and like have it be part of your package. And I think there's a lot of things outside of money that you can kind of bring to the table. Whether it's furthering your education, whether it's like a membership to something, like that's write-offs for that company. So like there might be like, look, like I can't give you your exact salary, but what I can do is pay for this membership for you, pay for this class for you, and like do these different things, pay for your cell phone, whatever it might be. So I think there's other ways you can negotiate as well. But I think it's really important to do your research. And I think the other thing I always like to say, because I think there is some confusion around this, is that you can't just like go in and ask for like a raise, because I think a lot of times people like read it or like see it in our site or blog or whatever, and they're just like, I deserve a raise because like this person's making as much as me, or like whatever it might be. Going in and asking for more money is like, you have to be pitching yourself on why you deserve that. And I think it's really important for people to understand, know the market value, know your worth, know what you've done in the past 6 months, 1 year, whatever it might be, and bring that to the table. Because I think sometimes people are just like, oh, I'm just going to go and ask for it and I'm going to get it. It's like, no, like you have to know, you have to pitch yourself essentially, and like why you're valuable to that company.
So do you think, how much of our like self-worth do you think is worked into determining what we think we deserve at work?
You have to also know yourself a little bit too, because I think at the end of the day, when it comes to salaries, there's a couple different things in plays. Like one, personally, what do you need to survive?
Yeah.
Having that number, what do you need to save for your future? Because I think saving is like a huge piece of it. So if you're like, I want to be putting away at least, $2,000 from my paycheck a month. I want to be spending this much, and like really putting together that like lifeline budget, and then also knowing like what you're giving up to do that, right? So if you're like, I'm going to be working my ass off at this startup, but I have equity, or like I'm going to be working my ass off, but I'm asking for a little bit more and I want a bonus to reflect that. Like all of those things you kind of have to put into the mix and understand, and then also just keep renegotiating. Like once you've kind of proven yourself and like done the work, I think that's super important, and like knowing your value as a human and kind of coming to the table, but also keeping in mind that the company that you're working for also has like standards and things that they're working against. And so it's not always easy to be like, here's more money. But like, at the end of the day, like I know business owners and I know myself, like I want to reinvest in employees that are showing up, doing the work, being positive, making an impact. Like I always want to retain that talent. But it's the people who kind of come in and are always like whiny month one, or like want to raise month. Like it's like I want this to just translate in the right way, where it's like, yes, empower yourself. Yes, negotiate, but be able to back it up.
Exactly.
Like, so I think that's important too.
And how much do you think imposter syndrome comes into the picture when it comes to negotiating, whether it's your salary or the benefits that you want worked into your contract?
I think tenfold. And I think it's important to kind of get over that. I think it's like you have to go in with a mentality that you have nothing to lose. And just kind of going into it and negotiating with that mentality, which can be hard because you're like, I do need this job. I do need that money.
I don't need this. Well, actually.
Yeah, I do need this.
I got bills.
But I think it's as long as you're realistic, but like kind of pushing that limit, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised, because they think at the end of the day, what's the worst they're going to say? No.
Right.
But like, we still want you to work here. Are you down to take this original offer? Okay, yeah, maybe. Can I renegotiate in 3 months? Sure. But like, they might just say, yeah, sure. Like, we'll give this to you and here's why. And so I think it's always about that balance of pushing boundaries, but knowing where to like net out. And negotiation is all just about chemistry and conversation and like understanding that there's another human on the end of it. So I think if you go into it like being like, that's my final offer, like everyone relax. Yeah. But I think if you're like, this is why I need this is why I deserve it, and this is the market rate and blah, 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 they can't say no.
Yeah, and I think it's important to like build that relationship with them.
Yes.
Same thing like with clients. Like it's when you go and pitch people cold, like it's just, if there's no relationship, there's no trust, there's no foundation there, then that's like, they're not gonna, why are they gonna invest in you over, Sally, Joe, and Harry down the street?
Exactly.
Joe and Harry.
See, have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome?
Yes, I think though it's a lot more difficult when you're conversing about your career with other people that you don't work with. Like that for me is sometimes weird when I'm just like, oh, I am doing a lot, and like, why am I doing? Like, do you know what I mean? I mean, clearly you know what I mean.
Oh,
but when you're, you're talking with your girlfriends, and they're like this, and this, or how much are you making, or like, I'm like, you know what? I can't come tonight because I literally might punch someone in the face. Like, I need to, and then I'm like, oh my god, I am, or even just saying to you, like, oh, I'm in charge of 60 people, like, fuck, am I really? Like, do you know what I mean? You stop and you're just like, what? How did I get here? Do I know everything? And like, no, but nobody knows everything. Yeah. And I think that's like the key. And your book was really helpful with that too. Just like, everyone's out here just trying to do the best that they can. And clearly what you're doing is, working. So believe in it. If you got that far, there's something
absolutely
speaking for you.
And you should never feel too comfortable. Then you know you're not growing, and then you know you're not evolving.
But I haven't had many issues with my industry. I'm in the beauty industry, in cosmetics. So mostly it is female. So I haven't had a ton of issue with like men and me not feeling worthy because I'm a female doing it. I think it's just my age is a lot more so the issue than a male dominated industry, because I'm not in a male dominated industry, which I love. But yeah, I think it's definitely more age oriented.
Yeah. More of the ageism that you're struggling with. Yeah. So I remember you were speaking there was a Chase by Southwest event, which is where we first met. And you had mentioned interviewing Martha Stewart and asking her about imposter syndrome. And she did not ever face imposter syndrome.
No, she literally was like, I don't even know what that is, and neither should you. That was like her answer. I was like,
love that. Okay.
Martha.
Do you think it's her age demographic that
what do you
she
think
didn't even
it
know
is
that it
that-
existed?
I think
she's just a bad bitch.
just a bad bitch. And she's just like, nothing will stop me. And like, when you speak to her, one, she's hilarious, but two, she just is like, look how much adversity she's faced. She was a model turned stockbroker, turned entrepreneur, turned like fucking, literally the Martha Stewart of, and she built this massive empire. I mean, homegirl went to jail. Like,
now she's like cooking with Snoop Dogg.
She's reinvented herself. She's like
times.
investing. I'm like, hell yes. And she just was like, I always believed in myself. I always knew I could do it. And like, I never looked back. And like, that's how it should be. And I think, I mean, good for her. And I think it's, that's a whole other level. But like, I think I love that. Like, yeah, fuck imposter syndrome. Like, let's stop talking about it. It's like pretending like it's not a thing and like just going for it. And I think it's something that our generation of women definitely feel. I'm curious to see if this next generation has it, because from what I see, it's
they seem very
overconfident.
Yeah.
They're like,
you chill?
They're like, I want to be vice president. You're like, you're 12. But like, I think like it's a totally different dynamic. So I'm curious to see that transition happen with this like new generation of workforce.
What do you think contributed to so much imposter syndrome or self-doubt within our generation?
I think a couple different things. One is that I think at least when I started out, there were so few women at the top. And the mentality amongst the women that were at the top was like, there's only room for me. And like, I got to keep you in this little box.
Scarcity mentality.
Exactly. And to be fair, that probably was true. Sure. And they probably had to work way fucking harder than we did to get to where they are. So I totally understood that. And so I think like that mentality came down to us. So then like, as soon as it was like, you're doing a great job, like I think we're going to promote you, you were like, me? They picked me, like I'm gonna, oh my God. And like, even like getting a raise or this, you were like, oh my God. And like, also it was a recession. So 2009 recession coupled with scarcity mentality, everyone was just like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like, and I think that just kind of was at least what my generation went through. And so now I feel like this new generation, we're like, the world is your oyster, and like content and Instagram and YouTube, and like, it's all, all democratized.
There,
right? And we grew up in like Fashion Week life where it was like, you didn't get invited. Like you have to look a certain way. You have to be a certain way. And it was like, and unless you like got into that club, like you weren't in. And I think like that has totally changed. And I think it's amazing. But I think it's like kind of slowly getting rid of like imposter syndrome and scarcity mentality. And like, I think now there's a little bit of a clash amongst the workforce. And like, I even feel it with our team, but like elder millennials meet like younger millennials or Gen Z where they're like, I can do whatever I want. And like, it's amazing. And we're just like,
no,
we're lucky to have jobs.
like yeah, that's a good point too. But the generation before us, and also like even our parents, being like you, like the industry has shifted so much. I mean, digital, what was Insta, you know what I mean? So I feel like coming up in a very weird time where it is shifting and you're having people be like, you can't work freelance. Like I remember my mom being like, what? You don't have healthcare? Yeah. Like you don't have, and I'm like,
401k.
I'm like, listen, like it's completely, and so many people are going to be working freelance in the next 10 years. It's going to shift even more so. So it's, I think, a matter of people always telling you like, no, you can't do that you feel like I can't do that. And then when you do it, you're like, wait, it can be done.
And it's hard with that older generation because I look like my grandma and my mom are just like, are you sure? Are you okay? Like, what are you going to do? Right. And I'm just like, look, I'm doubting myself enough right now. I don't need you to I need you to just like have faith in me.
I always tell my mom, worst comes to worst, I'm moving back in with you. But like, that's the worst scenario.
It's so true. It's just like a bunch of generations having completely different but parallel experiences, all kind of clashing in the workforce at once. But I do think business is ever evolving. And I think it's hard as a business owner because you're like, you just want to like have consistency and routine and like have this like really like loyal staff. But then there's also this like freelance, permalance, work remotely. And you're just like, how am I adopting to that when we're a fast growing startup? It's a constant struggle. Yeah. And I think like everyone's trying to figure it out, both corporate companies and small companies.
So we'd like to close every conversation with giving our 3 biggest takeaways from what we just talked about. But before we do that, I just have one last point that I want to touch on with you, and that's this influencer world, because it's evolved so much in the past, 5 years.
Yeah,
and now
insane.
Instagram seems to be like the most dominant one, Instagram and like YouTube. Where do you, because I feel like you guys rely a lot on influencer culture at Create and Cultivate. Where do you guys see that industry going? And what do you guys see happening with Instagram? Like, do you see Instagram dying the way like MySpace died?
Yeah, I mean, it's a real gamble. I think influencer culture has finally hit that stride, though, of being a real marketing platform. So I think it's taken a while for brands to be like, okay, all right, we're buying into this. All right, are we doing this? Okay, we're paying people. Okay, we're paying people a lot of money. Okay, it's working. Like, I think we've gotten to that point now where it's like influencer marketing is happening. It's kind of here to stay. But I do think there has to be this next evolution of it, because I think it's getting a little too #ad, #unpaid partnership.
Right.
And I think it's trying to figure out that level of like, okay, how are we doing this with it still feeling organic? I think YouTube is the one platform that has kind of figured that out.
Sure.
But I think, at the end of the day, I think influencer culture is just going to get bigger, better, and stronger. And I think it's kind of this whole new world. So for us, I'm always interested in exploring it, not only because I'm interested in the way influencers are making money as themselves as a career, but the way that brands are working with them and leveraging them, and the way like small businesses can kind of grow and leverage them as well. And then the whole micro influencer universe, it's just, there's so much to explore and it's so interesting. But at the same time, I think it's so important to be building your own brand and own product along the way, because of the Vines and the MySpaces and things like that. This can go away very fast, an algorithm can change overnight, and then you might not have something to fall back on. So I know blogging feels very old and like old school mentality, but I think owning your own website, owning your own kind of space online that you can always fall back on, always monetize. And that's why I think we're seeing a lot of influencers put out product lines and their own products versus collabing with brands, because they're really trying to be like, hey, look, this is me, but like I'm like starting a real company within a company. I mean, Lauren and Michael Bostic are a perfect example of that, branching out, podcast, this, that, the other. And I think that's the new sort of approach, is not just like I'm an influencer and like I get paid X amount to like post about this product. A lot of these girls and guys are getting savvy to the fact that like I am a brand and I am therefore a business, and like I am going to be doing my own product marketing, branding, etc. And so I think those are the people that will really transcend.
Absolutely. It's beyond just one platform.
Are there any up and
Career
coming
longevity.
platforms that you feel like you're like, oh, I need to
I mean, what the hell is
this.
TikTok? I don't know.
Like
Literally, I was like,
Right.
oh fuck, do we have to be on TikTok? What's TikTok?
Right.
It's exhausting.
yeah. And do you sorry, I'm just gonna continue. Do you feel like, because you were so at the edge of technology, when you started your career, do you feel like now it's just because like you're getting older, you're like, I don't know if I want to sit.
What are
like,
you getting
right,
at? No, I'm
but,
kidding.
no, but you know what I'm saying?
No,
because I said the same thing with TikTok. I'm like,
Yeah,
my cousin, my 15-year-old cousin's like, it's so cool. I'm like, what the fuck? No.
Yeah.
Nope, not doing that.
We're officially like in my generation. Like
Right.
Yeah.
that's truly how I feel. Like I'm always like, what is this noise? Like when I'm hearing music now, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so old.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm definitely out of the loop on that. But I think it's so important, like the Musical.ly or whatever the hell,
Yeah.
like all of these platforms. But like I'm like, this 9-year-old has like 10 million followers.
Right.
Like I think it's important for brands to pay attention to that and really be thinking about what's the next new thing. That being said, I think this is the first generation of our generation that will be growing up with social media. So like it just didn't exist for our parents, right?
Sure.
So it's not like they're like, oh, we were on Facebook and then we got off Facebook. It's like, no, we're going to be on it for a long time. So what is that evolution of aging with social media? And is there a platform that's going to start catering to that? I mean, I think it's going to be Facebook, but like at the end of the day, it's like, we're still going to be on it. Like, and now it's crazy because it's like babies are on it. So it's like,
Right.
you're going to have an Instagram from the time that you're born to
Yeah.
the time that you die, which is crazy.
Right.
You have a visual timeline of your
Right.
life. So we're in the middle. So I think it's really interesting to see what that's going to be over time and what it's going to be like for us, like as we get older.
Love it. Should we do
So deep.
takeaways?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, you get to kick
All
this
right.
one.
Let me
I know
just
it's your
start.
favorite to start.
So my takeaways would be, well, your advice on just like taking a minute for yourself. I think that we like to downplay how important that is. I think that being ready to go out on your own, it was very impactful to hear like I think when you're thinking about it, that's when you're ready and having that savings. So that would be my second takeaway, is to save up for that. And then I think thirdly is just that everything's always evolving. So you can never really sit comfortable on what you're doing. Like you said, like MySpace is like here and then it's gone, and like always being ready for that next thing, or continuing to put your work out there in a space that is just yours so that it can transcend with all the different apps and
I say in Work Party, if
Yeah.
you're not pivoting, you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true about every
Yeah.
business.
I mean, I can even say just with this show that like in the past year alone, like we've had to pivot every single season with brand deals and guest asks and PR, getting, PR for the show.
and platforms we're available on.
Yeah, it's always
yeah.
changing.
Yeah.
Like we're on Luminary now. I don't know what the fuck Luminary is,
Right,
but it's
like, I don't have
I see
Luminary,
it
but
on
we're there.
billboards and I'm like, okay, we have to promote Luminary now.
We're on TikTok. No,
Yeah, we're on TikTok.
I actually
I'm
can
like-
see you.
I'm
I can
like-
totally see you on TikTok.
I'm like,
doing
what is
that.
TikTok? I just know TikTok on the clock, the Kesha song. Do you not remember the Kesha song? You were not a Kesha girl.
I was not a Kesha girl.
Oh, I was a Kesha girl.
TikTok. I know, but I don't think that's what it is.
I liked it though.
My 3 takeaways. One, in relation to ageism, is that there's going to be some type of, whether it's sexism or ageism or whatever the fuck ism is going to be next. You're going to face some sort of pushback. And what I did is every time I faced that, because I worked so young, was I would diminish my shine and I would lower my voice to make other people feel comfortable, because I was like, oh, well, I am young, I shouldn't be at this table, but I forgot to realize all of the work that it took to get me the seat at the table, that I was like, no, I did just as much as everybody else sitting here to get me at this seat, so I shouldn't dim my shine, because at the end of the day it's not going to make anybody else's brighter. You know what I mean?
Right.
So always, don't let anybody else intimidate you, and just know that if they do feel intimidated or threatened by you, it's their own insecurity
issue,
and has
right,
nothing to do with you. If anything, it's a good thing, because you're really bringing your light to the table. My second takeaway would be imposter syndrome. Martha Stewart doesn't face it, so neither should you. She's killing it. And then the third one is, I guess, in relation to the advice that Gary Vee had about like starting, like you have all the time in the world. Like they're going to be, when it comes to any piece of advice, there's going to be a spectrum, and people are going to be at opposite ends of it. So ultimately take it with a grain of salt, and know that like listen to your own gut and where you're at in your life and you're in your stage, and know that like you're going to know, like just listen to both sides, but then make your own decision. Like don't let one person's advice be the end all.
I love it.
What are your 3 takeaways?
Oh my God. Okay. My takeaway, my takeaway is definitely, I loved what you said about how when you were young and fundraising, and like how your confidence and enthusiasm made people kind of reflect on what they weren't passionate about. I'm like, God, I never really thought about it that way. And I think that's so true. And I think that's also very similar to what's happening in the workforce too, because it's like Gen Z is going to save us all. And like, in some ways I definitely think that's true. And I think there's like ways in which they're like, no, we're not going to work this hard. And like, no, we're not going to do that. And I think there is part of me that wants to embrace that, but the other part of me is like killing myself, and it's like such a hard thing to reconcile, but I think that's really great. I think the other thing would be, about what you were saying, where you were like, I manage 60 people, and like feeling insecure, but not even like insecure, but just feeling like, can I say this? Are we saying this? Are we talking about this? Like, I'm such a huge proponent of being extremely honest when it comes to money and like uncomfortable topics. Like, look, you don't have to be shouting it from the rooftops, but like amongst your set of friends, like the only way that I learned to charge more money at my first company was because one of my friends who had a similar business was like, you're not charging enough. We charge this much. And I was like, fuck.
And good for her
And
for being on your side and not being like, oh yeah, like
Great.
she keeps it to
Yeah.
herself. Like,
And we started charging that much, and no one ever flinched at the price. And I was like, God. But I was like, thank God she told me. Like, otherwise I would have not known. And third is just TikTok. I think, are we getting on it? We're getting on it.
we're all going to have, check us out, because we're all going to have
TikTok.
one after this.
Oh, wait, I
Zack
have
will
one
be
more
dancing.
takeaway.
Yes.
Everybody needs to go by Work Party.
Yay! I love it.
Such a good, and it's on audiobook.
Yeah, Abigail listens to audiobooks.
That's what I do when I'm commuting instead of podcasts. Maybe I am old. I don't know. Oh my God.
Jaclyn, where can people go to keep up with you and Create and Cultivate?
Yeah, so I'm at Jaclyn R. Johnson on Instagram and at Create Cultivate and at Work Party. We have a lot of Instagrams. Hopefully it doesn't go away. And then also createcultivate.com.
I love it. You guys can follow me at Just Plain Zack.
And you guys can all follow me at Abigail _AF.
Yes, and don't forget to follow at The Adulting Podcast to keep up with the latest happenings on the show. Don't forget to subscribe to #Adulting and listen to us every Tuesday with our mini episodes on Fridays. And until next time, Abigail, we're going to be busy.
#Adulting.
Yeah.